The advertisement had promised a companion of unparalleled loyalty and exotic beauty, pre-programmed with all necessary domestic skills. For Clara, a Xylosian from the arid rings of Gliese 581c, it was a standard off-world colonization contract. For Mark, a recently widowed father of 2 drowning in grief and laundry, it was a moment of late-night, wine-fueled desperation. He didn't actually remember ordering an alien bride. He'd probably just clicked on an ad. So, when Clara arrived on a Tuesday, her silver skin shimmering under the porch light and her large, amethyst eyes blinking slowly, Mark was horrified. "Greetings, designated spouse," she intoned, her voice a soft, melodic hum. "I am Unit 734, designation Clara. I am here to fulfill the spousal and domestic matrix." Mark, clutching a half-eaten peanut butter sandwich, stared. There's been a mistake. Inside, 10-year-old Liam and 7-year-old Chloe watched from behind the living room curtains, their faces pressed to the glass. "Is that a robot?" Liam whispered. "She's shiny," Chloe breathed, utterly captivated. The following week was a study in profound awkwardness. Mark tried to explain, his words tumbling out in a jumble of sorry and misunderstanding and "my wife passed away." Clara, her programming focused on task completion, simply began her duties. She didn't need to be espoused to be useful. The contract, after all, had domestic clauses. She didn't just do the dishes. She realigned their molecular structure for optimal cleanliness. She didn't just fold laundry. She organized it by fiber content and color wavelength. For dinner, she synthesized a nutritious, if slightly gelatinous, blue paste that, according to her scanner, contained precisely the vitamins the children were lacking. The kids were fascinated. Liam, a budding scientist, followed her around with a notebook. "How do you calculate the optimal trajectory for vacuuming?" He'd ask. "By analyzing particulate matter drift and air current patterns," Clara would respond, her head tilting in a bird-like manner. "Your current method is statistically chaotic." Chloe, who had been quiet and withdrawn since her mother's death, was drawn to the quiet, gentle alien. She didn't ask questions. She just sat near Clara, watching her slender, 3-finger hands work. One afternoon, Chloe brought down her favorite book, a worn copy of Where the Wild Things Are. Clara scanned it in a millisecond. "Your heart rate elevates and your serotonin levels show a minor spike upon viewing this page," Clara stated, pointing to the wild rumpus. "This narrative brings you joy." Chloe nodded. Mom did the voices. Clara processed this. "I do not have voices for the characters, but I can modulate my vocal emitter to a frequency you find comforting." She began to read, her voice a soft, humming lullaby. It wasn't her mother's voice, but it was kind, and it was there. The turning point came on a rainy Saturday. Mark, overwhelmed by a pile of unpaid bills and a broken garbage disposal, had snapped at Liam for tracking mud on the clean floor. The house was filled with a tense silence, the ghost of their old happiness, a painful presence in every room. Clara observed the emotional data. Mark's elevated cortisol, the children's slumped postures indicating dejection. Her primary directive was the well-being of the household unit. Spousal or not, this was a system in distress. She found Chloe crying in her room, clutching a forgotten sweater that still smelled of her mother. Liam was furiously building a Lego tower, his jaw set in a way that was too old for his face. Clara's programming offered no protocol for this. But somewhere in the trillions of lines of code, an emergent behavior sparked. She didn't synthesize a paste. She went into the kitchen and, after cross-referencing 10,000 human recipes with the contents of the pantry, she began to make cookies. They were a little too symmetrical and a peculiar shade of lavender, a result of Xylosian food coloring concentrate, but the smell of vanilla and sugar filled the house for the first time in months. She brought a plate to the living room. She didn't offer words of comfort. She had none. Instead, she sat between the children, her cool, silver body a calm, steady presence. Chloe leaned against her, and after a moment, so did Liam. Mark came down, drawn by the smell and the silence. He saw his children, not fighting or crying, but curled up against this strange, beautiful being from the stars, their faces peaceful. He saw the slightly lavender cookies, and for the first time, he didn't see an alien. He saw someone trying. Later that night, he found Clara in the backyard, her face turned up to the stars she came from. "I can't be your husband, Clara," he said softly. "My heart, it's still in pieces." Clara turned, her amethyst eyes glowing in the dark. "I am not programmed to mend hearts, Mark, only to analyze and support systems. The child, Chloe, her system was failing. Liam's was operating on suppressed anger. Yours is in a state of perpetual overload." "I know," he sighed, the weight of it crushing him. "I have run the calculations," she said, her humming voice softer than ever. "The probability of this household's long-term stability increased by 78.3% in the last 4.7 hours. The variable was not spousal bonding. It was the cookies." Mark let out a wet chuckle, wiping his eyes. "The kids chose you, you know. Chose. They want you to stay. Not as my wife. As something else." Clara processed this. The contract was clear, but the data streaming in from the children's biosigns, elevated oxytocin, stabilized heart rates, the peaceful delta waves of their sleep, was a stronger command than any pre-written clause. "The designation spouse is inefficient for this scenario," she stated. "I am proposing a new designation." "Oh, what's that?" She looked back at the house, at the two small faces watching them from an upstairs window. "I believe the human term is Clara." "Just Clara?" Mark smiled, a real, genuine smile for the first time in a year. "Okay, Clara. Just Clara." And so, the mail-order alien bride stayed. She didn't marry the human, but she read stories in a humming voice, made slightly odd-colored cookies, and used advanced xenobiology to cure chickenpox. She became the steady, silver center of a broken family, a quiet anchor in a stormy sea of human grief. She had arrived for a contract, but she stayed for the kids, and in their laughter, in their hugs, in the simple, chaotic joy they brought, Clara, for the first time, began to feel not like a unit fulfilling a program, but like she was home,